Привет! Сегодня в гостях у АСАП студентка из Америки Изабель, которая ответит на пару вопросов о своей жизни в России и о праздновании Нового года. Приятного просмотра! So, hi Isabel.
Hello.
We're happy to see you and thank you for coming today. And surely a lot of people in our faculty know you, but in case someone doesn't, please introduce yourself.
My name is Isabel Stamler-Goody. I am from Detroit, Michigan in the USA. I am here to be an English teaching assistant or teach English with the Fulbright program.
Okay, thank you. And I think the first question that the majority of our students is interested in: why Omsk? Why are you here? Why did you choose our city? And how did it happen that you come here?
Well, actually, I chose Russia. So I applied to Fulbright to teach English in Russia because I had studied Russian in university at the University of Michigan, along with Screen Arts and Cultures. But I also studied in St. Petersburg and wanted to return to Russia. So I actually didn't choose Omsk. Omsk chose me. But I'm very glad that I ended up in Omsk. I like the city a lot and it's very beautiful.
Really?
I really like Lenina Street and the embankment. Very, very pretty.
Yeah.
And the people here are very nice and sunny.
Aww, that's so nice of you.
Thank you. And I'm sure when you learned Russian, you also learned some stereotypes about Russia. They are all over the globe now. And for example, domestic bears, balalakas, all that stuff. And how many bears have you met so far?
0.
Really?
I haven't seen one bear.
Not
Maybe-
even in the zoo.
Maybe in the zoo. Maybe in St. Petersburg in the zoo.
Oh.
Wasn't memorable, maybe.
Okay, and the next question is: how did your relatives and friends reacted when you told them that you were going to Russia? Hey, mom, dad, I'm going to Siberia. It's -13. Well.
Yeah, I was talking to my mother today and we were talking about the weather and she was quite shocked about how cold it is. But besides that, they were very excited, supportive of me going to Russia. Yeah, not scared or anything, just very excited for me because they know how much I am interested in Russia and the culture and the language. So for them it was like, almost as exciting as it was for me. And maybe some of my friends were a bit surprised, but not very surprised.
Okay.
Mostly positive feelings.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, traveling is cool anyway.
Yeah.
And the difference between nations is always discussed. I think in our case it's the difference between Americans and Russians. And of course we have something in common, we have a lot in common. But however, in your opinion, what is the biggest difference between our nations?
I think there's no really big difference. It's like a lot of little cultural things that are different. I feel like when I'm with Russian people, I'm not with foreign people, I'm just with people. But when there's certain cultural things that happen, I remember that I'm in a different country. One of the examples I like is in America, everybody opens the door for everyone else. It's normal. I can open a door for a man, but in Russia, the first time I opened a door for a man, he was like, "What?"
Yeah.
So like, I think gender in the U.S. is different. Maybe that's one of the biggest differences between Russia and the U.S. is how gender works. And also, we don't drink a lot of tea in the U.S.
I think you like coffee more, no?
Coffee or just water from the tap. Yeah.
Okay,
And
thank
in
you.
Russia, it's all about tea.
Yes, it's kind of ceremony.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
I like tea a lot, so it's good.
That's great. And while we're still on the topic of national differences, what is the most visible difference between American and Russian students? Not people, just students. Not people, just students.
You know, I'm not sure what the biggest difference is. I think maybe just how we study is different, and maybe the lifestyle is different because I think in America students, maybe, I guess Russian students probably procrastinate too, but American students procrastinate a lot, and they like to have parties a lot, this kind of thing. And American students are very maybe more individualistic and into forming communities at the same time. So there's a lot of different clubs throughout American universities. You can find a club for almost any activity. But yeah, we don't study in groups in the U.S., so we don't have the group camaraderie that you guys have. So it's a different dynamic in that way.
How do you think? Is it better or not? Groups?
I wouldn't say one's better than the other. When I was in St. Petersburg, I studied in a group and it was very interesting. It was nice to get to know a group of people really well and study with them. But in America, it's nice to pick the classes you want to take.
Oh yeah, it's convenient.
So it'd be nice to always take classes with some people and, you know, kind of be friendly with them and be like a family almost. But it's also nice to have freedom of choice.
Yeah.
So,
So like in Russia you study with people because you have to, and in American because you have common interests. So it's
yeah, it's a nice idea.
So you've learned Russian and you every day in Russian speaking environment, it's all around you. And how does our language sound for you? How would you describe it?
Well, when I first heard it, I didn't know what it meant. So it sounds different. It sounded different then than it does now, because now I know what things mean some of the time. But when I first heard it, well, when I really first heard how beautiful it was, because I do think it's a really beautiful language, I heard it being sung by Regina Spektor, who's a Russian immigrant who now is in the U.S., singing some Pasternak verse in one of her songs, and I just thought it was one of the most beautiful languages I've ever heard. So, and I still think it's beautiful, but now I know what it means sometimes. So maybe that's better.
Okay, and about Russian again. Learning Russian for most foreign people is always connected with some difficulties, with some struggles. And did you have any difficulties with our language? And how do you think, what is the most difficult part of Russian?
What's not difficult, I guess. When I started studying Russian, everyone thought, oh, it's so hard, it's a new alphabet, but that's really the easiest part, I think. And then you learn the grammar, and I think really the grammar is really, really tricky. The cases, verbs of motion, like in English we just say I go there, and in Russia it's like so many verbs to mean I go. Yes. So this kind of thing. And when I was studying in St. Petersburg Russian quite intensively, and I had this really great grammar professor, she would teach us all these kind of crazy grammar rules, and every day it was like, the more I know, like the less I know.
Oh yeah, this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And now, try to imagine yourself as a non-English speaking student. So like, different part. And what is the difficult part in learning English as a second language? How do you think?
Probably reading it's very difficult, because even for me growing up reading English was very difficult, so I think that it's not a very phonetic language, so I think it could be hard to read. And pronunciation in that way too can be difficult maybe. But I've heard from most people that English isn't the hardest language to learn because the grammar isn't too bad, but I think maybe conjugating verbs and kind of all the different tenses is probably very tricky.
Tenses,
yes.
Yeah,
Definitely. Too many of those.
Yes. Okay, thank you. And now, okay, let's finish with languages, and let's talk about celebration which are coming. So it's December already, and that means New Year is already around the corner. And that is one of the most popular holidays in Russia. And have you ever celebrated it here?
I have one, when I was in St. Petersburg, I did celebrate, the New Year on Nevsky Prospect with some friends, and it was very exciting.
Yeah,
That sounds so nice.
Yeah, the whole street's closed down and everybody's walking up and down this street just shouting "S Novым годом!" And drinking champagne on the street and watching concerts and kind of very, very jolly night.
So did you like it?
Yes, a lot. It's better than in the US, I think. In the US it can be similar, but it's not as cheerful.
Oh.
Yeah, like in Russia, everyone is like bonding together for 1 year, and so you're lucky enough to celebrate New Year in USA and Russia. You can compare them. You already did a little. And do you have favorite New Year's traditions in the USA and Russia?
In the USA, New Year's is really a friend's holiday. Unless you're a young child, maybe you spend it with your parents or some family. But if you're like in your 20s, your 30s, or younger, maybe you just spend it with your friends. So there's not really so many traditions. It's just kind of people will either have a party or they'll go to a bar and they'll just watch the crystal ball drop in New York for me, because that's my time zone. So we watch it drop on TV, and it's very exciting, and then everyone says Happy New Year. Yeah. So it's not very traditional. I think Russia's New Year is much more traditional, and I like the tradition of always watching Irony and Fate on TV. I think it's great. Everyone knows this movie.
Do you like it?
It's pretty funny. Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. I like this tradition though.
And what about your plans on this New Year? How will you spend it?
This New Year I will be spending it with some friends, with the French lecturer who's here, and another Russian friend we have with their family, so it'll be exciting to see kind of the family tradition.
Family celebration, it's very traditional for Russia.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
All the food.
Yeah.
Olivier.
Yeah.
By the way, have you tried Olivier?
I have tried it, but I'm a vegetarian, so I tried a vegetarian version. So.
Did you like it?
I like mayonnaise, so.
Okay. It's like the half of the salad.
Yeah, it's great for me.
And so festive season is a wonderful time of presents and dreams coming true. And what is your wish? What presents would you like to get?
I don't know. I need a new pair of boots, but I need to buy that for myself. So that'll be my present to myself, because I just have these large winter boots and kind of tennis shoes or nothing in between. And people are always saying, "Aren't you cold?" So I don't know. It's probably because I'm American that they ask. So.
Okay, that's great, and all the questions.
Okay.
So thank you very much for coming here today, and thank you for this interview. We're glad to talk with you.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much for your time.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.